Hi everyone. Can we get started? All right. So first of all, I want to welcome everyone for being here today. I know it's been a while since COVID that we've held physical events and be able to meet in person. So it's really fantastic to be able to get together in this fantastic venue at the Serena. It's also great to be able to have a joint event together with EO. Let me rewind 1 second. My name is Joe Hashahin, and I'm a part of YPO. So again, it's great to be able to have this joint event together with EO and get to meet like-minded people together in this venue. I feel very lucky and fortunate already to be here with all of you guys and to have with us Stuart Lacey. Stuart flew in this morning from Bermuda. If some of you don't know where Bermuda is, it's very, very, very far away. So we're very fortunate to have him with us, fresh and ready. I just had lunch with Stuart a few minutes ago, and you will all be amazed by his energy and enthusiasm and the content that he has to deliver. Stuart is a fantastic thought leader, published author, entrepreneur, investor, you name it, he does it. And best of all, he's also part of YPO. So that's also ways for him to give back to the YPO community to be here with us today. I also want to thank Greece, Julian, and Maya, our respective chapter managers, who are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see. So again, thank you all for everything that's been done and making this event possible. I also want to thank Vicky from EO, Vicky Dauda, who's my co-chair for today's event and who's going to be interacting with us also during the day. And last but not least, I want to say thanks to Kunal Karya, our learning officer at YPO, who was really instrumental in making this event happen and getting Stuart with us on board today. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. I would just ask that you all put your phones on silent, in your pocket if possible, if not face down. We'll have plenty of time during breaks to check on emails, and the world can wait for us. And also just to mention that there is full EO, YPO confidentiality during this event, so feel free to talk openly and bring out whatever comes your way. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Stuart take the floor and get us started on today's event. Again, thanks very much for being here, and we look forward to today's activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. And to everyone dialed in on Zoom, welcome as well. We are really glad that you're here, virtually as well as all of you here in person. We're here about luck. And I think that's a really unusual and interesting topic which many of us misunderstand. And just a tiny bit about me, my YPO journey has actually been one of 13 years, and I just finished actually being the regional chair for the Northeast US region. And it was a very busy time through COVID, as you can imagine. Tons of cancellations. And we had a very challenging time, especially in the Northeast corridor through New York and everywhere, where there were some really, really bad outbreaks, and we lost a few members and had businesses shutting. And it's so good to see people back together in person. It really is. It's kind of the lifeblood of our organization. For EO, I'm sure it's the same for all of you. It's really hard when we're distant from each other. And for those of you who dialed in, we're sorry you couldn't make it, but we really appreciate you being here virtually as well. And hopefully we can get you in-person meetings as well soon. So just my appreciation for all of you for the effort and the trust and the time and all of the protocols it took to get us here. So with that said, I'm going to walk you through, we've got about 3 hours together. It's going to be very interactive. It's going to be dynamic. I'm a fairly fun guy, so I'm going to keep it light, lots of stories. There will be table work we can do later on. There will be breakout sessions. Now, our virtual people will not be able to attend those, so the first half is structured to be fully inclusive for them. Second half will be more interactive here with us working together in different groups. But I'd like to start out and share some slides with all of you. And if we could pop those up on the screen up front here. And I believe they're going to be simulcast shared. Many of you might have seen the teaser video where I talked a little bit about this kind of family business health and whether or not we leave everything to chance. And we asked that question about, does it matter if we can improve our odds? I would think so. Does it matter if we can have better outcomes and reduce our risk? And the concepts that we're driving all of that is that we don't want to leave anything to chance. And that's basically what we've been doing. In fact, I would contend and ask you, would you leave the future of your business and your family and your health to chance because you don't fully understand what luck means? That's my question for today for all of you. And luck is not chance, and luck doesn't happen to you, but you happen to luck. So today is that opportunity for each of you to say, okay, I'm going to flip this on its head and I'm going to recast my view, break some of those norms, what we call the stories we tell ourselves. That's me on the stage about 5 years ago in Helsinki, Finland. Don't judge me by that jacket, by the way. That's my warmest jacket I had. It makes me look a bit like a professor, but I led a pretty crazy life that led me finally to be that point on stage. Lots of coverage with international organizations, TED Talks, stages all over the world trying to talk about the future, because I'm a bit of a futurist. But obviously that is the future me, that is the current me, that is the YPO kind of me, and the story doesn't start there, of course. So I'd like you to take you way back in time to where the story does start for me, because I think it'll be really helpful to understand how I started looking at this and my journey that brought me to the position that I finally decided to write the book on luck. So I effectively think of it as an operating system. If I go back in time, and if it's all right on the screen up here, could we just do the slide so I don't have to look at myself and get distracted by my handsome... I'm kidding. Thank you. I was actually born in South Africa, so I'm African native. I left when I was 7. My family moved to Canada. When I was in South Africa, I had a fairly bright mind, so I was skipped a grade. And then when I went to the Northern Hemisphere, because of my birthday, January 4th, I was moved into a half grade ahead. So effectively, I was actually a year and a half younger than everyone in my class. I also had a funny accent. I'm not 6'5". I'm 5'8". I think I'm still shrinking, but so I was small, young, spoke funny, dressed how my parents wanted me to dress, and you can guess what happened. I was the subject of tremendous bullying. And a lot of people go back to their early days and say, oh, I loved school. It was some of the best times of my life. It was the worst time of my life. In fact, I almost wrote a book called 3:30 Lawson Park, because at 3:30 every day I had to walk through Lawson Park to get home, and that's when I would get my beating. So I learned at a young age that question we all ask, why me? And what I learned is that I could not find a level playing field with all those bullies on physical terms. I had to start doing it up here. So if they made fun of me, I would do stuff like, they'd say, you talk funny. And I'd say, hey, you think I talk funny? I can act funny. And they would laugh, right? And humor would disarm and disengage. Or I'd find other ways that I could use different skills that I would develop to change the cards in my favor to make it more of an equal outcome. It wasn't until university that I actually kind of started to fit in more. I had my first girlfriend at university. I actually did an Olympic sailing campaign for 7 years in Canada. I started I really blossomed, I guess, at university. And so what happened is shortly after university, I was given the opportunity to go down to Florida and actually build a real estate company. I was only 22, but someone took a bet on me, and I was a born entrepreneur. I'm a very 0 to 1 kind of guy. And so I went down to Florida, and I was granted the opportunity to develop 768 condos, which is not something that usually a 22-year-old does. They thought that I would fail, so I negotiated a really aggressive structure and compensation, and I sold out the entire thing in 18 months. And the net effect of that is I made more money than any 23-year-old at that time should ever make in their life. And I had all the trappings of luxury, the fast cars, a house on the beach, the swimsuit model girlfriend, and I thought I'd made it. And then I got what's called over your ski tips, and I overextended. And all those lessons I'd learned as a youngster, I wasn't applying then. I was thinking with this other brain, this look at me brain, this I've got flash cash brain. And it did not serve me well. In fact, I crashed. I crashed so badly I lost everything. And I sold my television set for my one-way airplane ticket to Bermuda in 1998. And I went destitute, pretty much. And I think when you show up in a place like Bermuda, and we can talk about Bermuda a bit later if you want, but it's pretty idyllic. I mean, you've got beautiful spots in this this side of the world as well. And those of you that have been to Mauritius, I've been to Mauritius a lot. It's a bit like a small version of a Mauritius, but it's a bit like a Geneva landed in a small version of Mauritius. It's got an incredibly robust business and financial framework. So I'm a 0 to 1 guy, and I said, you know what? I'll start a financial company. And I did. And then that was the first of 12 companies that I started. And I was applying the whole time the learnings and the operating system that I developed as a youngster, and I was refining and refining and refining every single time. And so, fast forward, I ended up founding a company called Trinomi. I actually sold my financial company. I had this ideation moment. I'd had 2 in my life. The kind of ideas that you never want to say no to, and that's serendipity, which we'll talk about a bit later. But my first idea was back in Toronto, and I was sitting on what's called the GO train, which is a double-decker train that takes you in and out of Toronto, and I was doing an hour-and-a-half commute each way to school. And my boss at that time, Mike Emery, had said, Stuart, there's something called the internet. I don't know much about it. This is 92. He said, can you get this Internet for Dummies book? Tell me what you know. I read it. I came back. I said, Mike, you know what? I think we need to buy our domain called alliedcanadian.com. If we don't get it, no one, will never get it again. So he said yes. We paid $29.95. And on the train on the way home, I said to myself, I need to go out and get a loan for as much money as I can get and buy every domain that hadn't yet been bought of scale. And that time, Coca-Cola was still available. Ford was available. Procter & Gamble was available. Literally at that point, that was I would argue, $200 million mistake. Because at that point, you could own those domains without having the business before they changed the law, and people were selling those domains back. In fact, one of the most notable was a photographer in Utah, in the United States, who was taking pictures around Park City and Alta Ski Mountain, and he had the domain Alta Vista, which he sold to the search engine, I think for an undisclosed sum, but it's rumored between $20 and $22 million for one domain. So my $200 million mistake reminded me that when I had an idea that big later on in my life, is that me on the sound? When I had an idea that big later on, I would not say no to it. And that was the idea that started Trinomi. So I was sitting at my dining room table with my niece, Francesca. She was 15 at the time, taking photographs of me and my kids and putting them onto Snapchat. And I said to her, I said, you know what, Francesca? Please don't do that. She says, don't worry, Uncle Stuart, they delete everything. And you might remember when Snapchat said they deleted everything, and of course they don't delete it. And I said, Francesca, you know what? They don't delete it. The truth is, that is probably their single biggest asset, and you own that. And in fact, it's probably your asset, and they're using it without your permission. And so I started a company called Trinomi. I sold everything, founded the Silicon Valley startup on the premise that you actually own your own data. And that was in 2013. And as a result of that, I ended up building a Silicon Valley startup and getting a lot of favoritism in the world, as you can imagine. And that's why I ended up with Inc. magazine one day with this guy. And that's Kevin Dawn, the editor, and he called me up after I'd done about 3 articles with him. And he said, Stuart, he said, I want to do another article on personal data with you. I said, you know what, Kevin? It's kind of like 2018 now. I think the world knows this is the big change. It's not the most exciting thing anymore. And he said, what is being a good editor? And here it came. It's been in my head pretty much my entire life. And I said, you know what, Kevin? People keep telling me they think I'm the luckiest person they've ever met. And he says, tell me a bit more. I said, well, I've kind of got this operating system. He said, do you have a recipe for luck? And then it just came out. I said, no, it's more like a formula. He says, you've got a formula for luck. I said, yeah. And he goes, will you write it with me? And so we wrote, at that time, 6 proven ways to generate good luck. And that was the starting of the journey where I decided that what had happened to me and everything that I'd built needed somehow to be shared. But 10 months later, that's me jumping out of the nest. Tronomi had grown to a point I needed a CEO to scale it and grow it. And so I hired and I replaced myself, and I stepped out of my company. That was my baby, lost my identity, and I was kind of a bird falling out of its own nest, and I felt really lost. And about, I guess, depression, maybe 3 months of depression when your whole identity is wound up in a company. And I can switch to a hand mic if we're going to continue that. If you could bring me a hand mic, and I'll try that. So what happened then is I was actually at a YPO event, and I bumped into this guy. And his name is Adam Whitty. Thank you. Is that better? There we go. Okay, we'll try that without all the clicks. So I bumped into Adam, and Adam said, Stuart, I love your work. I was like, what do you love? He goes, you're the guy that wrote that article in Inc. about luck and the luck formula. He said, would you write a book with me on Forbes? So I had the time, and I wasn't sure what to do, and I'd just been asked to be that regional chair. And I said, you know what? Why not? I'm all in. And so I started by thinking, you know what? Luck is not chance. That was my starting point. So if it's not chance, what is it? Well, chance is like getting hit by a lightning bolt. That is your odds of getting hit by lightning. You can improve your chance. And an example is any of you that go to a casino and play games in a casino will know that craps are the best odds in a casino. But there's still 49.8%, which means the house will still always win. It's still chance. And the chance of you carrying the Olympic torch, I actually know that data because when I didn't make the Olympics in sailing, the Olympics came to Canada for 88, and you could write an application to run with the Olympic torch. And so I said, I'm going to write an application, and you had to handwrite it, and I submitted it. And they expected 60,000 applications, and instead they got 700,000. And so I improved my odds, and I sat down, and I hand wrote almost 150 full applications. It took me 2 weeks every evening. So now I'd improved my odds from 1 in 700,000 to 120 in 7,000, which is approximately that. And you know what? That is me running with Olympic torch outside Chateau Montebello. And I did actually come 4th in the Olympic trials, so I know what 4th feels like for people who don't medal, and that was my ability to win. But those are still not very good odds, and it took a tremendous amount of effort to improve them, and that was still complete and total chance. Chance is one thing, but luck is also not going to be conditioned or changed by charms or talismans. Raise your hand if you use a charm, have a lucky rabbit's foot, a lucky token. Okay, not many. Or some people don't want to be the only one to put their hand up. Okay, we know that it's not charms or talismans because there's a gentleman by the name of Phil Esposito in the North American NHL Hockey League. And he was one of the best skaters of all time. And if he went across a pair of crossed hockey sticks in the locker room before going on the ice, he would have a terrible performance. And some of you might know Steven Tyler, Aerosmith. If he doesn't have his lucky scarf tied to his mic stand when he goes out on stage, he has a lousy performance. So the question about charms and talismans is, argumentally they don't help, but they can actually hinder. Because in the absence of your talisman, you tell yourself a story that you don't have it, and that can actually negatively affect your outcome. So that leads us to believe that there's this kind of view on how we construct and understand luck and chance. And so I said, okay, we need to try and get into some more mathematical understanding of it. And if you go back in time, the traditional view was that we were half made from our genetics and the rest was chance, 50-50, right? And, you know, we can kind of see that happening in people like our golden boy here, Michael Phelps, the winningest, to use that word, which I hate, medalist in history. But what you might not know is his torso's 30% bigger, his legs are 30% shorter, he's got size 14 feet, and double jointed ankles. He's a human porpoise. He's genetically engineered by complete genetics to actually swim better than almost anyone on the planet. But if you asked him, he doesn't just swim, he obviously works out it a lot. So we had this view of Gladwell. Gladwell came in Outliers and said, if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you can master it. Well, this is kind of where we ended up, is okay, 50% of your future is Gladwellian. It's our talent development, it's our effort, it's our work, it's how much we put into where we go. And then we'll cut the other two in half. Chance is 25%, genetics at 25%, I'll work hard enough, I'll make it. But is that really true? Because if you're in the New York City subway, you will see the subway girl, and she's been playing for her entire life, she still hasn't made it, and she's still busking in the subway. So talent development in and of itself is still not enough. And I have a wonderful story later I can tell you a little bit about when I met this guy, bumped into him, and he literally is the mountain, right? This is the mountain from Game of Thrones. He is the world's strongest man. I bumped into him at the airport in Boston, at Logan Airport. And I ended up actually having an amazing interview and chat with him about when I was writing my book. And here's what's interesting in his life. It took him 7 years before he won first as world's strongest man. I said, how much time did you invest before you came first? We did the math, and on roughly 10 hours a day of training, every day for 7 years, he put in about 36,000 hours before he became first. So obviously that's well in excess of Gladwell's 10. But it does mean that you can get somewhere by sheer brute force and strength and trying to crack the system. But we want to ask ourselves, is that the quickest way to our futures, by throwing 36,000 hours at everything we do? So what we do know, and this is kind of where I start to lead a little bit into where my view on the formula is going, is that it's obviously all about the mindset. Mindset really changes everything, and I argue it's 66%. 2/3 of your outcomes are driven by that. True chance is about 1% because it's that badly misunderstood. It does exist, but true chance is at 1%. And then I cut talent development in half from 50 to 25%, and that left 8 for genetics. We've actually been testing this in data, and it's actually coming back remarkably close to these numbers. And as you know, we're going to the fixed versus growth mindset. Anyone know Carol Dweck? Great. What we know from Carol Dweck is it's 20 years ago, believe it or not, but she talked about how we go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And this was kind of the beginning of almost all leadership development in the last 30 years. It was built on this. So we knew it was about mindset, but the challenge was it's literally completely and totally insufficient, because when you actually look at the growth mindset categories, they are aligned almost directly with effort. Some sense of I put in, I get back, I contribute, I can change, rather than that kind of genetic look. And so if it's insufficient, there had to be another mindset. And I call that the luck mindset. And on your table, or sent digitally to everyone who's dialed in, there's actually a luck mindset chart. And I invite you, when you get home, to put it up next to your monitor, put it in your office, put it in your kitchen, and try and take some time to understand that flow and how you can get yourself onto the right-hand side. And we'll look at that a bit later. But I said, okay, so I've come up with this luck mindset. That's just what I think. I need to start talking to a whole bunch of really smart people, smarter than me, and try and get their take on it. And I reached out to my network, and what I found out was like it blew up like a synaptic mesh immediately. I could not stop the inbounds I was getting. It was like a genie had come out of a bottle, and people were like, wait, that's totally correct. There's something else there. And everyone had a different story. Everyone had a different take. And so I said, okay, I need to try and kind of contain this a little bit and try and create some order around what I was learning. And I started saying, let me reach out to some people specifically that have stories that I can try and start to categorize these learnings into, because I had originally 6 things, and I thought there were more. I ended up talking to David Brashears. David Brashears summited Everest more times than most people except for Sherpas. But he did so in that fateful year when he was filming the movie Everest using IMAX equipment. And any of you who've seen the movie or know the story, that was a year that they got up above summit camp, and a storm was coming in. And 2 expeditions decided to continue, and David turned around and went down, and he tried to persuade them not to continue. And they were so, and he calls it pot committed, they were so committed to what the effort they'd put in that they could not turn around, and it resulted in one of the largest losses of life in Everest's history. Really experienced climbers as well. And David, although he's an amazing filmmaker, actually talks and teaches about adaptability and resiliency training that comes out of these kind of scenarios of being under tremendous stress. Because we know we don't make good decisions when we're under stress. I actually spent some time with the daughter of a YPOer, Christina Anderson. Now, Christina Anderson is one of the survivors of the largest school shooting in US history. This is the Virginia Tech shooting. She tells an incredible story where she was in the classroom and they heard the popping sound outside, not realizing what it was until the door was busted in, and in a guy came with automatic rifle, and she was shot 6 times. Her friends were shot dead next to her, and she's now dedicated her life to a foundation called Koshka about awareness of school violence. And that's when I started to think about these concepts of situational awareness, which ended up being one of the chapters. There's Shark Tanks all over. There's Africa Shark Tanks, there's Asia Shark Tanks, the US one. I was introduced to Barbara Corcoran. She is the most spectacular person in the world at failing. It's her number one thing she does is fail. She loves it. And so I talked to her about this capacity of not just this lean idea of failing, which is iterate and start small and try, but I talked to her about what does she see in failing. And what she said, very interestingly, is, Stuart, people that I believe that fail are the people that succeed in failing, the people that spend the least amount of time feeling sorry for themselves after each failure. The least amount of time feeling sorry for self after each failure. Some of you might know Bobby Sager. He's quite prolific in YPO. He counts 2 best friends, one the Dalai Lama and one Sting. Pretty good friends. I spend a lot of time with Bobby. He's a beautiful human being, but he spends most of his life in war-torn countries. Behind the Robe, his book, is one of them. And another one, he spent all his time with children in some of the worst places in the world you can imagine. And he came up with an idea of a yellow ball called a hope ball. And it's a yellow soccer ball made out of the same material as, Crocs, those kind of rubbery Crocs. And it's literally indestructible. But he and I worked on empathy a lot together, because what he taught me, and a good example is when he was in these countries, he would bring the yellow balls, but he wouldn't give the yellow balls to the kids. He would get down on his knees at their level, look at them in the eyes, and he would ask them for their soccer ball, which sometimes was like rubber bands, condoms, pieces of trash tied together with string. And he would say, I will trade you your ball for my ball. And that is a completely different empathetic approach of understanding that he's not there to give. He's not the dominant. He's not the, I'm here to save you. He's trying to get to a different level of understanding of another human being. So he and I spend time on empathy. I'm currently actually mentoring Vandana. top 10 Netflix show, worldwide phenom, an unbelievable spirit. And she spent a very long period of her time actually as the chief women's rights ambassador for the UN, and spun up 6 different global initiatives, including 2 in Africa, for women's rights. This is Travis Roy. I worked on positivity with Travis. That is the NHL hockey teams, Tampa Bay Lightning and Boston Bruins, and he spent his entire life dedicated to being a professional hockey player. And his claim to fame is his entire career lasted 11 seconds. When he was finally called up to the team, first game, second period, the coach finally tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Go in." And he skated up to a face-off. In hockey, you kind of face each other. And the other person slapped the puck in the corner and he chased after it. What he didn't realize is the guy chasing behind him couldn't stop in time and hit him headfirst into the side. He fractured everything, and he was quadriplegic on the spot 11 seconds after he skated onto the ice. The amazing story he tells, though, he's lying on the ice, unable to move, only able to talk. And they could tell it was terrible. There's video, obviously, footage of it. And they bring his dad on, who comes scuffling across the ice to him. And his dad says, "Travis, what's up? Are you okay?" And Travis goes, "Dad, I'm great. I made it." And we talk about positivity, like what's happening in Travis's mind that he spent his entire life for that moment, for that career. And the one thing he's doing is espousing positivity to his dad about that circumstance. Unfortunately, Travis passed last year, but he spent about 15 years dedicated to raising money for kids that have suffered disabilities, especially quadriplegics. And his teachings on positivity permeate a lot of my learnings in positivity. I spend time at X Prize, time at MIT Media Lab with, that's Ethan Zuckerman in the middle. Salim Ismail wrote the foreword of my book, trying to understand about how we change behaviors globally at scale. That's Nassim Taleb at the bottom right, Black Swan. Fascinating if you're trying to figure out how things move in triad sets of threes. That's how he's written all of his work. Top right is Dr. Diana Garcia, a poet laureate who understands human nature from how we might use words to enact feelings. And when I collaborated with all of them, I identified 3 categories. After all of that time and effort and learning, I said, okay, great, I can figure this out. I've got a rubric, I've got a matrix. There's 3 broad categories. There are our habits, things that we can do each and every day to build on. There are behaviors. These are systemic, and that's really important because they happen in regards to a system, meaning that something happens and you respond to it. And then there are actions. These are things that we take proactive things on. They're purposeful, they're undertakings. And then I took those and I said, okay, I've got these 10 principles, and I put them into these habits, and the 5 habits of curiosity, passion, connectivity, positivity, and empathy. 3 behaviors, adaptability, situational awareness, and serendipity, and 2 actions, choice and our ability to recover from it. And those are the fundamental 10 core principles that combine together create not only the formula for luck, but result in a luck mindset. Now, some of you will be fairly comfortable with that because you know you've done the luck assessment and you had an idea that those were coming. You've been ranked in those, so you have an idea of how you might be ranking in them. And so now that I had those, I had to try and figure out how I could map them to Carol Dweck's work and create a proper formal kind of luck mindset. And what I realized is that there was a rule of 3s, and that's kind of, again, from Nassim Taleb. And so I said, let me map each one of these to the foundational principles of all mindset work thus far and see if I can create that luck mindset. And I'll just take an example. Encountering difficulty is kind of the formal old school version of a mindset characteristic, which I mapped to adaptability. And in a fixed mindset, someone who is in a fixed mindset when they encounter, this meeting is being recorded. Got it. Can we click on that? Got it, please? Thank you. I guess that's for all the people dialed in. So, yeah, oh, even better. So, in a fixed mindset, when we encounter difficulty, we give up easily. Faced with an obstacle, we hide, we evade, and we map that to fragile, if you're Nissim Taleb. In a growth mindset, we persevere in the face of setbacks, we stick at tasks for long periods of time, and we become robust. And that's usually where most of us would have stopped when it comes to adaptability, is how robust can we be? How robust can our company be? What can we do to make ourselves robust health-wise? But what's interesting is there's absolutely a third category. And if you ask Nassim Taleb, we know what it is anti-fragile. It's a whole next level. And what is anti-fragile? That is when we adjust rapidly, when we face adversity and we build resilience in the face of that. And that's like this next generation view of it. And in fact, I spent time with a guy named Clem Sunter. He's a South African. He wrote a book called The Fox and the Hedgehog. Some of you might know the book. And hedgehogs put their head down and go in one direction until they bump into something. And foxes start constantly looking up and readjusting every way. So the goal is to try and find, and I tried to find that third core foundational thing. And when I did, it allowed me to effectively map everything into that. And that is now the luck mindset chart. So once I had that structure, it was really helpful for me. I had a way that I could share it, I could teach it. I knew it could be a curriculum if needed. I'm actually talking to a couple business schools about potentially how we might teach this. It was an interesting time for me to say, okay, now how do I put that back into the formula? You can say it's a formula for luck. It had to be a formula. What does that formula look like? So for those math nerds in the room, I will almost get you level. For those people that hate math, so some of you want to put your hands up, I know. I'll try and keep it really, really simple. But the bottom line is, as we said, chance is 1%, genetics is 8, talent is 25, the luck mindset is 66. Add it all together, and you got 100% of the system, that's luck. And then we can put the habits in, the behaviors in, and the actions in. Tiny bit of math. The habits are infinite. That's why they're habits. They're like building muscles. What I want you to think about with those 5 habits are you can work on them in small components each and every day and continue to build them, and there's no limit to what you can build them. The behaviors are situational. That means you can't always control when situational awareness will be required. You might be in a dance club and smoke billows across the ceiling. In that instant, you have a choice. Do you stampede for the front door like everyone else? Or do you go for the kitchen? Because there's definitely going to be a door in the kitchen where no one's going, right? Or do you stay there? Or do you hear gunfire and you think, I don't think that's gunfire, that's a popping noise, right? So you can only have so many instances of situational awareness. You can only have so many instances when you have to adapt to something that's happening in your life, or when serendipity occurs and how you respond. As a result, they're not infinite, but what they are is non-zero. And that's really interesting. What that means is they're a multiplier, but they're either an upward multiplier or a downwards multiplier. In a moment like that, when you're called upon, in a behavioral moment, to act on one of those 3, acting the right way can significantly improve your luck. Acting the wrong way can significantly deteriorate your luck. Some of you might not know, but you know, if you go into the tube in London, you want to be in the first car or the last car, but not the middle car, because the chances of having an explosive device in the London subway are 187% higher if you're in the middle. And no, the emergency exit row is not the safest row in a plane. And so on and so on and so on. There are these situational things you need to be thoughtful about. And then there's the actions. Now, actions are binary. Anyone knows binary, 0 or 1, it's like code. It can only be a 0 or 1, and that's why it's so interesting. If you do not choose to act, it's a 0. And what does a 0 do? It multiplies everything by 0. Nothing happens. And that makes sense now, because choice is so powerful, right? Just like when I was on that train when I was younger, and I had that idea that was $200 million idea or more, and I chose not to act. I thought about it, and how many of you have heard about something amazing happening and go, oh, I thought of that, I should have done it. And you didn't. That was choice that got in your way. And all fail forward is our ability to keep choosing and remultiplying it, that formula again and again and again, by 1 every time or by 0 every time if we don't. Okay? Any quick questions on the formula? Makes a bit of sense like that, but I know what question usually comes is someone says, but Stuart, I was always told that luck was preparation meets opportunity. What do you want to say about that? Isn't that the casual formula or the formula? And the answer is, chance taken out of it, that is preparation. Genetics, talent, and your commitment to develop your habits over time is actually preparation. Believe it or not, the other two are opportunity. So luck actually is the intersection of the two, but if you just stop there and you don't understand what you can do to influence it and what your behaviors will have in terms of the outcomes, you're giving it only a casual view in totality. And a copy of that is in yours, and that is the actual formula for luck. Yeah. I was just going to CeeLo, kind of like that was my big moment, and I'm going back. Okay, that's all right. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. That's a great question. So to give a tiny bit of context, and we might put some of that in the Q&A later, but because the people that are virtual won't be there later, I'm going to take a bit of time to do that now. But to give it a little bit of context, I spent the last 2 years as well as the impact officer on the Women's Business Network and YPO. And I'll actually answer it by actually telling you a little bit of how I joined that and why. I was in Cape Town at the GLC, and I met with Courtney Dorn, and I've been a fan of what they're doing in the network. And I said, what's your board construction like? She goes, we're all women. And I said, wow. I said, Courtney, you're as bad as an all-male board. And she looked at me shocked, like, how dare you say that? I said, no. I said, Courtney, I want you to listen to me. You're your own sounding chamber. You're listening to the same point of view by the same people, the same construct. And you need to have at least one, if not more men, on your board so you can get that ultimate point of view. We argue that every male board should have female dynamic members. Why wouldn't your all-female board need male members to get that point of view? And Courtney, known for being really talented, very smart, came to me the next day and said yes or no. And me being a YPO said yes. What did I say yes to? And I became the first male board member in history on that. And I spent 2 years committed to trying to get men more involved in that decision, because I think men can advocate, because it's hard for a woman to advocate. Because when a woman's advocating, or anyone of color or disability, or anyone that doesn't have some privilege that other people might have, we usually cast the eye, unfortunately, that they're kind of selling their own wares. And it's much more powerful when someone who doesn't have that advocates on their behalf. So it's your question. I think we could probably throw 5 of the formula components at your question. In the back. Sorry, do you mind repeating the question? There's a microphone there if you want to.
Okay, so the question was on the opportunity part of the formula, which is based on the research that has been done in the lectures that you've given. How does opportunity look like for women and people of color, and how do structural inequalities, how are they quantified?
Good, okay. So if we go back to the formula, what would be interesting there is, if you don't mind just popping the slide back to the formula just so we can work through it. Let's go to behaviors for a moment, okay? When I had that chat with Courtney, she could have easily held her line, oh no, this is how we've done it, this is what we do, this is the nature, but she was adaptable in the moment and immediately made so our ability to change our stories we tell ourselves, our kind of core foundational beliefs, and view different routes when called upon is a kind of maybe an aspect there, which would be an interesting comment. When I worked with Ethan Zuckerman at MIT, he discussed a concept called homophily, which is that all your information comes from the same place. What happens with homophily is it means that, for example, I read my news from the same media. Or in the US election, 70% of all news actually came from Facebook and online media. And as you know, an algorithm is actually deciding what information you're getting. And as a result, those algorithms actually fed people some really bad information, untruths, as you know. So what homophily does is if we surround ourselves with people of the same view, same voice, same opinion. It's all reinforcing. We don't force ourselves to think outside of that box, to challenge. And one way to do that is to seek new views and incorporate new views, which I guess is that comment I made about the board. Now, I would argue that, to your question, it's not just opportunity, because a lot of the habits are very important as well. So when it comes to people of color or underrepresentation of gender, I would say that if you were to open up your connectivity to a broader circle than you're comfortable with, and this is an issue in YPO, a lot of people in YPO say, how come our chapter doesn't have enough women? And the answer is usually, well, where do you go looking for your new members? And they go, well, I go to the same country club and golf club I always go to. And I said, well, in the US, as an example, aren't those all white dudes, right? So that would be connectivity, would be you getting and growing and changing the way in which you connect with people. Empathy, sensitivity to it. In fact, I would argue in diversity training, if you're not getting sensitivity training, you can't get very far with diversity, because we've seen, again, in YPO and EO, what is the experience when a new female member joins? Or God forbid their male spouse partner comes to an event and someone walks up and goes, hey, mate, nice to meet you. What, how did you join? And the person goes, I'm actually the husband. And then they turn their back and walk away. That happens in YPO and EO because we're not sensitive enough, sensitivity training. So there's a tremendous amount of empathy in that. So you asked if it's just opportunity. I would say we could probably go through, and as I said, probably 5, maybe more of the principles could be thrown against a challenge statement like that, and we could invite ourselves and say, how could we be more, fill in the blank, diverse and inclusive, if we were to look through each one of those? Curiosity, what does it look like to be in that person's shoes? How does it feel? What don't I know? What don't I understand and appreciate about their culture? So is it helping a little bit, or?
I'm conscious about the online and everybody else's time, but if there's an opportunity, given my own lived experience in the work that I do, I feel a lot of the part of the box, which is 66%, has an underlying assumption of agency. And a lot of people don't understand that you come to your realization of agency through exposure. It's an extremely important ingredient that a lot of people of color and women don't really realize. And the power of realizing your own agency helps you achieve a lot of that. Yeah. So I feel that if there's maybe either it fits in there, or if you ever do a Luck 2.0, maybe we need to investigate agency and exposure and the correlation and how that affects all of this.
I love the comment, and you can write the forward for my sequel book, Formula for Luck, 10+1 principles. No, but thank you, and you're right, and in respect, again, of the people online and our time, what I'll do is, if we have time later on to bump back into that, and I'll noodle it a bit during the break, and I'll see, but I love the question. I really appreciate it. I care about it as well. Thank you. What was your name, sorry? Rashmi, thank you. So, okay, my big reveal, my CeeLo moment. Still almost as good. And then I had to pause for dramatic effect. Okay, all right. So let's take it up a notch. We've talked a little bit about the theory of how we got here. Much more interesting is what does it mean to you? That's why you're here, right? How can I personally, you personally, take a change in it? Peter Drucker in the Valley, in Silicon Valley, if you can't measure it, you can't change it. We have to measure luck. I knew that going in, so we had to build an assessment tool, a luck assessment tool, so we could actually measure luck. And we knew that we needed personalized data, because with personalized data, we can do some really cool things, right? We can change the quality and quantity of your outcomes, and we can measure your progress over time towards a certain goal. There's some other cool things I just want to let you know about why we're so hell-bent on the data side. Salim and I are working currently right now on how companies might or might not be lucky, and how we might be able to use that, for example, to make decisions on who we invest in, who we buy, who we work for, how we hire, how we train, how we retain, how we convert. I'm working right now with a Fortune 500 company, 4,000 members strong, 16 offices, and we're just embarking on a 13-month journey to try and figure out that data in that company. Silicon Valley also wants to look at this data, and we're talking to Alliance Bernstein, to A16Z, having a memory blank, Andreessen, about how they might make bets on startups. Because if you could run a luck assessment on a founder of a startup company, and thereby know the propensity or chance of them to actually succeed or fail, That'd be pretty interesting about how you might invest as an angel investor. It also might change where we place our trust. Imagine if we could know the assessment on certain criteria like we can find from an assessment on luck and what it might mean for someone we might vote for, how we might make a decision, who we entrust our truth to. So we're working a lot on this data side, and we asked you all to take the luck assessment. Hopefully all of you did. I know that there were a lot that were taken, so thank you. And for those that didn't, that's the luck assessment bit.ly at the bottom. And we now ask you all to pull out that sheet that you have on the table, and for those at home, it was emailed to you. This is the Masterclass in Luck canvas, and we're going to work on it now together. And we did ask all of you to hopefully either bring with you or to have on your device. So this is when you can pull your device out. Joe won't fine you with a fine. You can pull your device out, and I want you to take the results that you have from your luck assessment. And what we're going to do is, in the top left corner, do you see core values and MTP? I just want to talk quickly about those before we actually do your mapping. Quick show of hands here. Who has core values and knows what their values are? For your company? What about personally? Okay. Core value statements are really important, and I believe that all of you at some point when you have time should, on the luck canvas, write your top 5 core values on that canvas and hopefully put them in order. You need to rank them. And if you haven't done value ranking, that is once you identify the 5 things you care most about, you then say, if I had all 5, but I had to give one up, which would I give up first? Now if I had all 4, and then all the way down to often sometimes it's like love and family and other things sit there. But it's really important to have your values written down and ranked. Then on the top left-hand side as well, there's an MTP, which is called a massive transformational process or transformative process. And this is your North Star, your top right corner. It's that place you are going. And it's also sometimes called your why statement. Why are you here? What is your purpose? Your purpose statement. And the reason I do that is on this form, when we start to work on these areas, any effort we do needs to be aligned with where we're going and attuned to our values. Does that make sense? Okay. So now to the data. Here are the results. We're going to look at them in detail. Don't worry about looking at the small numbers. Don't try and find your name and go, look how I did. That's why I move off that slide quickly. Kunal's luckier than me. Okay. Here are the results for the YPO, Africa Great Lakes, and the EO, Uganda. You both scored roughly around the same, around low 60s, and that's the luck ladder. So what you can do now is take your score and put your score on the luck ladder. And then you can put your chapter score on the luck ladder, and you can see how lucky you are relative now to your chapter mates. So you can put the EO if you're EO, put the YPO if you're YPO, and then put yours in either a different color or a star in a circle. And that would be your scoring on the luck ladder. Yep. 63.0. Sorry. That's the overall score for EO. Average was 63.0 on the luck ladder, which would be a mark just above where that star is. You see the star? It's just above 61. And YPO, and there's not too many gold members in the room, it's 61.7 if you can't read it. And then what you're going to do is I want you to make concentric marks all the way around with your scores. And I want you to make concentric marks all the way around. Once you've done it, you do a line, and that's a radar plot of your relative luckiness. And you're going to compare it to your chapter, and you're going to plot that too. So that's going to take a little time. Don't rush. Effectively, you're going to take your score first and put your curiosity score on there, put a dot, and go all the way around with your 10 scores, and then draw a line connecting them. And then, depending if you're EO or YPO, you draw your chapter plot. 10 dots and a line connecting all of them, please. And we'll give you all a few minutes to do that, so no rush. And I'm going to get a glass of water and I'll check my microphone with you at the back. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who needs another couple of minutes? Hand up if you need a couple of minutes. Okay, a couple more minutes. Ooh, I like it when you've got... Okay, everyone, so every time the murmur starts to go up, we know that that's a good chance that most people are hopefully almost done. Good learning lesson for me. This is the first way I've actually presented it this way, and next time I'll have a second slide right afterwards with really big numbers just in the slide so you can map it. So thank you for that learning lesson. See, I'm adaptability there. Yeah. Now what you're going to do is I want you to circle where there's a large gap between you and your chapter. Okay? Now, ideally, if you had colored pens, you'd put green circles where you are well above and red circles where you are well below. And for now, you can just circle each one, but just make a note if your dot or star is significantly above or below the norm. Okay? And Joe had a good question. Many of you will find that a lot of your dots are fairly close. Those are great. That means you're about standard. What we're looking for, ideally, are your 3 greens and your 3 reds. So try and take the 10 and boil it down. Now, this is where we're going to start prioritizing for you about how you're going to spend some time for the rest of the day. And more importantly, because this is a little bit of a teach someone to fish kind of event, when you go home, you'll be able to then take the workbook and the exercises and self-study and the book. There actually is a book for everyone here today as well. And you'll be able to then focus your energy on which chapters you want to start on and in what order. When you're statistically above the line, it means that you've got some superpowers there. You're above average, which is fabulous. This means you could well be a mentor in some of those. And if you're well below, it means that you've got some room to make up. They might be your greatest opportunities to increase luck in your system, and you could be a mentee potentially. So hopefully now most of you have, hopefully 6 circles, but at least a few that give you a really strong indication of where you're statistically above and statistically below. Is that agreed? Okay. So I'm just going to go around each table very quickly and just volunteer someone who's not looking me directly in the eye. Come to table 3. And she's not even looking at me at all. She's still working, so I can't pick on her. Chirag, tell me what your biggest core strength is that that exercise showed to you, where you're statistically above the average by the most. Adaptability. Very adaptable guy, okay? And where are you the lowest?
Fail forward.
Fail forward. It's interesting because often adaptable people are pretty good at failing because they can adjust from it. So we can probably try and figure out why. Okay, go to this table here, and we'll go for you, Azar.
So higher on connectivity.
Connectivity, well-connected guy.
And lower on choice.
Lower on choice. Do you think that's speed of choice, or what would that your knee-jerk be on that choice for you?
I think I'm just very indecisive.
Indecisive.
I always feel like what's the best option to choose? I put a lot of thought, then I put too much thought and never make a choice sometimes.
Really interesting. Do you know actually that there was a study done on supermarkets, and do you know that about 20 years ago there used to be about 5 items on a shelf for each category, like 5 different cereals, 5 different jams. The average number now is 38.2. And they've done some work on it, and I had actually followed some of the studies. Running shoes were actually the study, is that if you go into a store and there's like only 5 different kinds of running shoes, you typically go, I'll take that one because it's close enough to what you want is. When you have 38 pairs of running shoes, You want that lace, but that heel, but that color, but that extra wide, but this name, and you don't end up buying because you're not actually happy. And in fact, statistically, for those of you in retail, by the way, anyone in retail, do yourself a favor, reduce the number of products you have. They put jams at the front of a grocery store, and if there were 30 jams for 2 weeks, they measured how many sold, and then they put 5 jams for 2 more weeks, and the 5 jam table sold 3 times as many jams, just because there was less choice. This table here, superpower, who wants to go? Can we pick on you? You're still working, okay. You're still working, okay, we'll go to this gentleman here who looks done.
The one which is higher is
Adaptability, high, great.
and situational awareness was like.
Why do you think your situational awareness is so low? No idea. Do you get caught out in the rain, like with an umbrella, without an umbrella, or do you find that you know, it's interesting. I'll answer that in a learning that I'm having is there's a very big difference in situational awareness depending on the region that I'm working. If you're working with Israelis, you can imagine they're fairly situationally aware. They all have a bunker in their house. If there's they know what gunfire sounds like. You know, they're like pretty aware people, right? You know, and if you go to other parts of the world, you know, like Canada, they probably don't know what a gun is, right? I mean, I'm Canadian, I can make that joke. No, but, you know, if you think about it, now, it's an interesting point. I got asked this question by the corporation I'm working for. When they did the luck assessment, they said, your situational awareness questions are really personal questions, like, what would I do if? And, you know, do I know what would happen if? And what does situational awareness look like in a company? And we're actually potentially going to launch a different luck assessment for business, which in that category alone will probably have the biggest deviation. However, I went back to them and I said, do you know what your biggest risk at your company is? What's your biggest risk to the life and well-being at your company from a situational awareness? Anyone has their guess? The biggest risk at your company, is it the fire drill that you all plan for and there's no fire? And you all have a person in an orange vest and you all stand outside and no, it's not that. Do you know what it is? It's a disgruntled spouse. No, it's a disgruntled spouse that will come and potentially either assault or inflict harm or shoot someone at your office space. And in fact, the number one thing that can be done about that is to create a safe layer of trust within your company such that if you are having a domestic abuse situation, that you invite your employees to be able to safely say and know at reception that if your husband comes looking for you or your wife, for them to kindly say you're not on the premises, not home, not whatever, because you don't want to have that confrontation on premise. Isn't that interesting? This table, I will go to you.
Positivity, I mean, the two tops are connectivity and serendipity.
Your 2 tops.
My two tops.
Serendipity, that's a big one. Good.
Yeah, and my 2 weaknesses, I'd say, is actually surprising, but adaptability and choice.
Adaptability and choice are your 2 weaknesses.
Yeah.
Now, she picked 2 tops and 2 bottoms, so she's already like a whole new level better than everyone else, right? Are you an EO or YPO? EO. Okay, see, the EOs want to try extra hard, so she got 4 out. By the time I get round, there'll be like people will be naming all 6. Okay, this table here. Vikesh, what's your number 1 superpower?
Number 1 was positivity.
Great.
I only had one which was below the chapter norm, which was situational awareness.
Awareness
Yeah.
was below the chapter norm. Only 1.
Only one.
Where were you on the luck ladder? Okay. What was your luck ladder?
75.
Whoa, 75. So 2 things are happening there. He probably kind of shape-shifted his numbers a bit to win. I'm just saying he wanted to look like he was the luckiest guy, which, by the way, is a skill set, manipulating data. I'm kidding, mate. Well done. Okay, volunteer from this table. Are you ready? Okay, your number 1?
Choice.
Choice is your number 1. Excellent.
And the low is empathy.
Okay, it's the first time I've ever met one of our female attendees where empathy is the lowest. A 2 on empathy. Okay, is your spouse here, your partner? He is here? Are you the empathy part in that equation? I hope so. Okay, yeah, I hope so. Okay, a 2 on empathy. Remind me not to be hanging out with you, girl. Okay, no, just kidding. And choice number 1, fabulous. We'll actually look at the chapter data and you'll actually see that choice is actually quite lacking actually. So you're quite well out when you actually will compare it to like even the global level. So interesting, really good. Okay, we'll come here. Hussein, how about you?
Okay, so the strongest was adaptability.
Okay.
And my lowest was situational awareness.
Why are you so adaptable?
I don't know, I just adapt to situations.
Because you have a partner with zero empathy, so you have to be adaptable. Okay. Did I say that? I think I said that out loud, didn't I? Okay. Damn. Stuart, okay, this is all confidential here, right? Okay. Yourself, sir.
Adaptability,
Okay.
bias,
And lowest fail forward.
Fail forward lowest. Tell us a little bit about what your Achilles heel is on fail forwards. What your weakness is. What's your kryptonite? Why are you weak in fail forwards? If that's your lowest, why do you think?
I haven't thought about that.
Okay. Do you take lots of little efforts and bets and experiments, or do you tend to take bigger bets on things, bigger commitments?
Smaller commitments.
You take small ones. So you should be better than at failing on those because there's less treasure involved, less time involved, which means you should be able to fail better. So we'll have to try and figure out why that is. And I think there's some exercises you can try in there. Do you feel sorry for yourself after you fail? Do you kind of pity yourself and go, oh?
In the past, yes, but lately, no.
Lately, no. Okay. It's some good work to do there for you. All right, coming over here. Yourself, sir. What's your superpower? Okay, you guys need to talk. Okay? Accountability partners there, mentor-mentee. Okay, we got a person really good at failing forwards. Not failing, failing forwards. Is it try or tree? Tree. And what's your connectivity? Interesting. Tell us about connectivity. Why do you think you're not as connected as you could be? Okay. Great. Right. So, number one, thank you for your vulnerability and honesty, and we want everyone here to be that way. So, excellent tree, thank you. And, you know, not everyone is meant to be an extrovert. In fact, there's a lot of opportunities where now we're learning that the best leaders are EQ-based, not IQ-based. They're more thoughtful, more intentional, so probably makes you a really excellent leader. So, but thank you. I'm going to go one last table, and then we're going to just have a quick thought about what we just saw from that quick roundabout. This table, who wants to go? Who's smiling the most? You're smiling the most, okay.
Because that was my husband who just put.
Okay, we got another husband-wife couple here. Let's,
My top one was serendipity,
great.
and situational awareness is the one right now.
Okay, your top one serendipity. Tell us about serendipity. Why?
I have no idea. So I was actually, my second best one was
Okay, so you just asked what does it mean, and I'm really glad we ended it with serendipity. So serendipity is that kind of go with your gut, punch through an obstacle quickly just because it's there. It's that it's also not just when you recognize it, it's what you do about it. So in the book, and I'm pretty high on serendipity, I actually double down. When serendipity is occurring, I ruthlessly and recklessly investigate it, and I push twice as hard because something's happening to cause it, and I want to be I'm curious, I want to figure out what it is, and I don't want to let it go by. And when negative serendipity is occurring, which is, if you can think about those times when something's happening, it's like I bail, I halve, I immediately cut my losses. And so I'll tell you an interesting story there. So I was 4 years ago building an identity startup. And we were going to bring all identity onto the blockchain. And I'll move to the front of the room so not everyone is turning their back. Sorry about that, everyone. So I'm building this identity startup, and I'm having really fun, and I've got this group that I want to partner with. And the crypto kind of legend dude that's running it, he and I are kind of seeing eye to eye, and I haven't made the decision yet, and I go on vacation with my family to Iceland. And I hadn't taken a vacation in a long time, and we're in Iceland for 10 days. And anyone been to Iceland? It's a really cool, yeah, it's a really cool country, right? With like volcanoes and, glaciers and all kinds of stuff. And at one point in Iceland, there's a stretch of road that goes from the black sand beach up towards one of the volcanoes, and it's this black highway that goes through this green rolling kind of hilly turf stuff. And I'm driving down that road about halfway through, and I've been thinking about like this deal, do I do it, do I not do it? And I can't get out of my head, so I put on the radio. And the song that comes on the radio is a song called This Is What We Started by Steve Aoki. It's kind of like one of those big kind of like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, damn. So I get off the road and I send a note off to this guy and I go, you know what? I said, I'm in Iceland. I just heard the song, This Is What We Started. No, I didn't say I'm in Iceland. I said, but I just heard the song, This Is What We Started. I'm really excited when I get back to talk to you about this deal. Here comes serendipity. I have dinner. I wake up in the morning and there's a message that comes back. And he goes, dude, that's really weird. He says, have you seen the video for that song? I said, no. He goes, watch the video. So now I'm really curious. I turn on the video. Steve Aoki recorded that song on that piece of road. The video is on that strip of road I was driving. Is that crazy? Like, still the hair goes up on the back of my neck. I'm like, how insane is it? And if you watch it, the Steve Aoki video, you will see that stretch of road. They're all running around. And so I emailed him back and I said, whatever it takes, I'm doing the deal. I'm in, 100% in. So that's an example of serendipity. Like, I have no idea what caused that, but I fully threw myself into it. And the same kind of thing happens, like negative serendipity. How many people here have dreams, like bad dreams? I guess they call them nightmares, like bad dreams. No. There are moments in your life where those happenstance things always occur. It's what you do about them that matters. It's about how you recognize and push into the serendipity, how you fall into it, what you do about it, which is choice activated as well, right? Choice being part of the formula. Sure, there's what are the odds of that happening? You could say that. But it wasn't just the odds, it's what I did about it that changed it. But good question. So where was I? Sorry. Dreams, yeah. Bad dreams. Whoever, we all must have bad dreams, right? Does anyone here never have a bad dream? Okay, good. So who here wakes themselves up out of a bad dream? You know when your dream's not going well and like the gun has no bullets, or the girl, the guy doesn't want to take you on the road, or like it's raining on your parade? Who here just says, I don't like that dream, and wake yourself up? You do. You do. Okay, serendipity gal. There we go. Right? So there's actually mapping there. There's mapping there, which is that our ability to choose our reality, and those people that can wake themselves up of bad dreams and recast that are actually known to be really, really high on their ability to focus on serendipity and actually get into something called flow states. And if we have time later, we're going to talk about flow states because they're super cool. So yeah, well, that was great. Thank you. So, and you guys are a great couple. So complimentary to each other, not like you two. You guys are like messed up. Okay. It's not going to work out. No, I'm kidding. It's perfect. You guys are like wonderful compliment. You got to watch out for you though. Okay, so what did we just learn in that very quick run around of the room, right? Is most of us have, like, not everyone said we're crushing on choice and we're weak on connectivity. There's so much differential between all of us, right? Okay, so hopefully now what you've done is you've created some concentric circles, and you've now got an idea of how you might prioritize. And that's really important because for the second half of the workshop here, we're going to be working on some of that stuff. And for those people at home that are virtually dialed in, once we finish this session, my invitation and ask for you is that you take the opportunity to take out, do you mind if I steal your workbook for a second, just so I can show people? You take your workbook, which you've all been sent digitally, and you have your mapping, you have everything in there, but then you'll see there are exercises for every single chapter, and it gives you some real interesting practice, personal and business exercises, one of each. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out a really impactful and useful exercise that you could do to actually start training yourself towards that new goal. And the business ones are really useful for business, the personal ones obviously are really useful for you personally, but you can actually use them for the opposites if you find they have great value. And my invitation and goal for you, if you want to move up the luck ladder quicker than anything, is take your ones where you're relatively weakest and For those of you that are virtual, hopefully you'll be getting a book or you can buy the book on Amazon. For those of you that are here, you'll be getting books. But I would start on those chapters. The book was written in such a way that you don't have to read it from beginning to end. You can read the intro, you can read the end, but the 10 principles you can use in any order you want. And what I want you to do is I want you to prioritize on the ones that you have the most you can learn from, because you're going to get the most lift. Okay? And then I would recommend you do one a month. Don't try and do one a day or one a week. I would say this is almost like a 1-year purposeful undertaking. And if you really want to see a difference, what I invite you all to do is set a reminder for yourselves, or even the chapter can do it, and maybe invite you all to do the assessment 12 months from now. And the only question you're going to need to ask yourself is, did you honestly make a commitment, especially to the ones that you're weakest, number one. And number two, I'm a huge believer in pay it forward. What I really want you to do as well is find one which you're strongest at, and go find someone you can pay it forward to, someone you can mentor. Now, in the sessions we're going to be working at in the room today, you're actually going to get that opportunity to pair up, superstars and, with other people that have, and create those pairs. And for those of you that might be virtually dialed in, I would hope as well that maybe within your forum or your chapter, you try and find some pairings, because there's nothing more powerful than trying to teach someone else. Watch one, do one, teach one. The way we master a subject is by teaching. And even those people that are relatively high, my suggestion to you is you're only high because you scored high in the 4 questions, you answered a certain way. And if you're our boy over here, he cheated anyway and just put 10s for everything. Just kidding. So there's so much still to learn from applying those exercises. So I would really invite you, but you just might want to prioritize that way and get the most starting point, okay? The insights, here's what we learned. 53% of the attendees are EO, 48% are YPO. The overall scores were very close at about 62, 63. But interestingly enough, our empaths are EO. They're 14% statistically more empathetic than the YPOs in the room, or the YPOs that did the assessment. And that's really interesting, because we would want to ask, why are arguably potentially a younger generation, startup-y, what is it that's happening? Maybe, so there's interesting areas that we can explore there. They're also slightly better choosing, EO, 6% better choosing. YPO is slightly more curious, 7%, and serendipity at 11%. Are you in YPO or EO? So you're holding EO up. Without you, EO would be even like lower down. Okay, so you guys, EO's lucky to have her. Okay, and that's interesting there, because curiosity maps often very differently, and I actually had the segmentation done for male-female, and then Greece and Kunal asked me to actually recast it to make sure it was EO-YO, and I don't have time to do all the gender-specific, but usually empathy is higher for the females than the men. But on the curiosity, I wonder why YPOs would be more curious, and what we might answer then is, I would tell myself a story hypothesis that maybe an EO in launching and building, going through that company build and kind of that big future opportunity, you're very heads down, very focused on one thing, and maybe YPOs are getting to a level where they're kind of thinking, what else is there for me? Like, what else could I do with my time? Where else might I apply my energy? Did I get it right with my first, second, third, fourth company? Is there another company in me, like when I sold my financial group to start Trinomi? So maybe there's but that's a discussion point. That's a hypothesis. I have no idea if that's true. Self-declared interest. So you were also asked in the assessment to pick the one thing you were most interested in learning about. And I can tell you, every time I do this, it is almost never that the one you want to learn most about is the one that you're weakest at. So that's a blind spot, right? And here, interestingly enough, 37% of Y and 29% of E were interested in passion. E also wanted to know about connectivity, and then followed by empathy and adaptability. And Ys were on passion, positivity, and adaptability. Passion led for both. But you score relatively high on passion. I mean, you can see you score equally, and if you go look at the global average down at the bottom, you're at the global average for passion, but that's the one you're most interested in. So that would be a great chapter to read because you're interested in it, right? That's a very good indicator where you might start. But it's interesting that it doesn't map to what you're really good at or what you're not good at. It maps actually to a global standard, no deviation. there's a pretty big difference in empathy. EO, who scored much higher in empathy, is more interested in empathy than YPOs. Well, that's, if you're not empathetic, you don't want to learn about it. So that matches, yeah, that was actually pretty funny. Adaptability, a level of interest, but situational awareness, EO has no interest in any situational awareness whatsoever. They're not aware at all, apparently. YPO is interested. Serendipity, again, EO, don't get no serendipity, except for yourself. Choice, 0. Fail forward, 0. Wow. No one identified choice or fail forwards or the action items as the ones that they were more interested in, more learning about. I guess that's because we probably tell ourselves a story that we're pretty good at choosing, right? We've got into EO, we're in YPO, we're pretty good at failing and learning from it. If you look at the global averages, though, you are 14% behind and 15% behind the global average on choice and fail forward. You're 23% behind in situational awareness and 16 and 18% behind in positivity and empathy for Ys. And then for Es, you're 9%. Again, choice, fail forward, situational awareness, 9, and positivity. Interestingly enough, the only difference between EO and YPO was on empathy, and we saw the big empathy gap before. But in terms of your positioning, you are more curious than the world, you're more connected than the world, and you're a bit more serendipitous in the world, especially YPO. And your weakest points are choice and fail forward, situational awareness, and positivity. That's what the data says. Yep. Really good question, and I love it. So I invite you, as part of doing your breakouts later on, even at dinner tonight, to actually ask that question as well. And I'll tell you a story which is really interesting. So I facilitated a virtual session for Southeast Asia, YPO, and we had about 200 virtually dialed in. And I asked the chapter chairs, I said, and the day chairs, I said, what do you think the 3 biggest rooms for growth are going to be? Pick 1 habit, 1 behavior, and 1 action. And they said, well, the action is going to be fail forwards. We're not very good at failing. They said the behavior is going to be situationally aware. We're not very aware of what's going around us. Sorry, the behavior. And the habit, they said, would be connectivity. We need to be better connected. They were sure those would be the 3. And they were right in failure, and they were right in situational awareness, and they were completely wrong on connectivity. Their lowest score by far was empathy. And that's interesting, and we talked about it a lot in this session. We said, why do you think you scored so low globally on empathy? And they all tell themselves a story that they're super empathetic. And then what came out was really interesting is I asked during the session, I said, how do you define empathy? And they said, well, you know, we have these really strong family commitments, and we have these kind of trust bridges that get passed all the way down, and we care deeply about what family lineage says and what we're supposed to do and where we're going to go. And I said, interesting, is that empathy? Because that sounds a lot more like following kind of a certain cadre or a certain historical, that's not really deeply empathizing with another human being's journey and trying to put yourself in their shoes. In fact, it's almost the opposite if you think about it, because there's not a lot of self-determination for many of them who kind of stay within that lineage. And that was a really interesting. So in Southeast Asia, there was a very big differential on that. Here, I would bet, if we looked at situational awareness, again, in Israel, they'd get all 10s, like we got that, right? For yourself, I asked the audience, do you think choice and fail forward are lower in the East Africa Great Lakes region for a reason? Do you mind just grabbing the mic for her, please? Thank you. And I love the feedback, so let's keep the feedback all to like 30-second feedback loops. We'll get it from people, but I'd love to get a little bit of feedback. Why do we think that's the case in the region?
I'm a second-generation East African, and I'm going to say that it has to do with culture. You know, like, I mean, we're raised in a culture of we don't fail. You don't fail. You keep pushing until you get it. And so I think failure is actually slightly unacceptable in this part of the world.
And does, in that cultural view, are people vulnerable like that? Do they share their failures?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, I'm a second generation coming into the family business, and you know, it's like you have your parents that have set a certain bar, so like that pressure that's never spoken about, but it's like the elephant in the room.
Great, thank you. I love that. There's a share right to your right.
Being very blunt, AGL is a lot with Rwanda, Uganda. We've seen a lot of people leave, and I think in this room there are a lot of Indians. And what has happened over the last 50 years is a lot of Indians have left this part of the world, and it would either be people who were very successful or people who were not very successful, or people who had the guts to come back. So I think the group generally, the DNA also defines the fail forward. We cannot afford to lose. We have to win.
Great, interesting feedback, thank you. Any other thoughts on why statistically we might not be better at choice? Thank you, there's a gentleman here. Why we might be not better at choice and fail forward in this part of the world. Do you get as many opportunities? You're saying no, right? And then sort of based on your comment earlier, you know, a woman of color, woman, you know, opportunities are not as frequent as they might be in other parts of the world where that's becoming more normalized. And we can talk about that. There's a lot of data from YPO. I don't know the EO data. But for example, we have a Japanese chapter, 148 members, not one woman, right? In my Bermuda chapter, when I was chair 7 years ago, we had one woman. And after 3 years, we had 20%, and now we're 38% female because we made an intentional decision to do so. But we had the commitment and the community to do it.
Yeah, I feel that there is a bit of a risk-averse culture.
Risk-averse culture. And is that because businesses that are, Kunal, we were talking about this in the car, like family business, real estate, you know, slow and steady, ticks, works, builds over time, a little bit more risk-averse maybe? Who thinks we might be a little bit more risk-averse in this part of the world? That's a small hand. Okay, great. Okay, and if I went back to the data, the other thing I think, situational awareness. How situationally aware are we in this part of the world? You have a comment there? Please. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand behind the stick. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm part of the camera crew. So, no, I just wanted to say something about the fail forward. I imagine that those who are part of a family business will most likely be low on fail forward because they've got to protect and they're not probably allowed to risk it since they have to follow the rules of the family. But if you're starting a business, most likely you'll be high on fail forward.
I love that, and I think that gives me some added impetus to talk again to YPO, because I was actually going to ask, one of the things I'm trying to get YPO to do is actually offer this assessment available so we can actually get metrics on YPO as an organization, 33,000 of us. But there's three kinds of YPO members, right? There's the hired guns, there's the founders, and then there's the lucky sperm club, sorry, that's what they call them sometimes, right? The family business, right? But I bet if you took founders, like scrappy 0 to 1 people, they would score a certain way. If you took hired guns, they would score a different way. And if you took family businesses, they would almost certainly. So in regions where we have a higher, you're still laughing at that, for regions that have a higher percentage of family businesses, almost certainly that they would score differently. That's a very interesting point. And in fact, what I like about that is I'm going to change and add that. I'm going to, courtesy to you, sir, I'm going to add a new question on the survey that says, can you self-identify as either a family business, a hard gun, or a scrappy startup? Great, love that, thank you. I'll take a question from this side of the room, or any observations on where we were weak. We talked about situational awareness a little bit lower. Any thoughts on that? No? Okay. And there we are, thank you. And positivity, we're 16% lower on positivity in YPO and 10% low in positivity in EO. Why? Why are we less positive than the global average in this part of the world?
I think it's connected to choice as well, because the way choice is defined here, it's about taking responsibility for your circumstances, and positivity, I think, has some overlap. But I think in this business environment, there's a lot of negatives outside of your control. And so I don't think it's necessarily avoiding them, but it's saying, you know what, I can't keep the currency from depreciating. So I'm going to just figure out what to do about that, but I don't feel very good about it. And I think that this is related to the risk and the fail forward, because I think there's actually a lot of risk and a lot of people working through really big risks and still succeeding, but with less personal sense of being able to affect them.
Great. Now, thank you. And what I also heard in that, and maybe I'm not mansplaining you because you're a guy, so I can reframe. That was for you.
That's my wife.
And I'm done. It's like a mic drop, but it's not a mic. Anyways, I love it when you have spouse partners in an audience. So I would contend that if we did a political stability and stability index map, if we did a currency stability and stability index map, and did some other macro trends and nailed it against this, you would probably find exactly what you're saying is correct. That in parts of the world where you might have a government that you don't do much about, you know, they've been entrenched forever, or there's worries about nepotism or whatever else is going on, it changes the risk threshold, it changes the ability to get stuff done, it might increase negativity because there's a lack of trust and comfort in the future of the country, all that kind of stuff could affect it. And then risk-wise, huge currency moves, right? If you live in a dollar world, somewhat still, who knows if the dollar is still the dollar world, but if we kind of make that question, US people suffer no currency exchange, like they don't think of it, whereas in the rest of the world, it's like top of their mind, right? So really interesting and probably almost certainly correct. So thank you for that ad, that's great. Okay, YPO is out there, 18% below EO. Our empathy king over here, we're gonna come to you. Why is YPO different from EO when it comes to empathy? Why are EOs so much more empathetic than YPOs?
Okay. Personally, I think EOs are more empathetic than YPOs because I'm not going to say this. They're not startups, but they're younger.
Yep.
And the younger generation, I believe, now is more empathetic.
Yeah, because old farts, we don't want to take anyone's shit anymore, and we're like stuck in our ways. And is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I said it for you. Okay.
Perfect.
God forbid you see an actual gold room, like if it's like empathy is at zero. It's like, I've made all my money, I don't care what you do, I just want to play golf, right? But so almost certainly, and I actually haven't done EO, YPO groups before, so I love the learnings. I would suggest that will probably be something that I can hypothesize and then test future going forwards, I would agree. Yeah.
I don't suppose it's just the age, but if you're looking at the global stats here, it's the fact that EOs, one of the criteria is you have to be a founder. So if you founded the company, it definitely changes the mindset.
Great. So if I did that segmentation and asked you to self-identify as the family business, I think that I called it family business, I remember, it definitely did. And no hard guns in EO? Wow, I didn't know that. Okay. Really, so that question wouldn't work very well for EO, but it worked well for YPO. Gotcha. Thank you. Good point. Okay, so I'm going to pause there, but there's some really interesting conversations that can come out of this quickly as we start to understand our kind of our regional view, our chapter level view, our forum level view. I've actually conducted these for forums. And what's really interesting, when you start to understand your forum mates really well, and you understand where they might be strong and weak, it actually opens up whole levels of conversation and parking lot issues that can actually be surfaced, which otherwise would not have necessarily come to the front. So if all of you, my hope, especially also for those people who are home and won't be doing the second half of the session, is take the workbook, take the book, map it, use the online assessment, not the assessment in the book, because the online assessment is so much better, gets data, and then you can compare it and revisit it. But use that tool if you are in a forum with your forum mates and actually unearth the conversations that come out of it. I've had some really, really amazing findings with forums that I've facilitated through that process. You don't need me to do it. You've got all the materials you need to do it yourself. If you want me to do it, let me know. I'll try and dial in and help you sometime. But my hope is that you can kind of go out with your fishing rod and you've got the tool set now. So we are about to break. For those of you that don't have all the stuff, that's where you get it. I think you all do. The book is on Amazon for those people that don't have the book or want to get books and give them to friends. And for our virtual attendees, I think we want to say thank you to them. And do you want to say anything?
Or you want to do it? Maybe you do it.
Okay, here comes the mic. I don't want to steal your thunder. This is your day chair.
Yeah, just to say a quick thanks to everybody who joined us virtually. It was great having you with us, having your presence in the room. You won't be with us for the second part of the session because we'll be doing breakout rooms, and just in the sake of practicality, we're going to end it here. But thanks again for joining us. It's been great having you.
Great, and thank you as well to those virtual people. Some of you I know, I believe Emery is online, hopefully. Emery, I missed seeing you here. Greece, who couldn't make it here, thank you for everything you've done. Sorry I can't thank you in person. And hopefully you get to an in-person event soon for those people that were dialed in. So we're now going to, I think, move on. Oops, let me, one more click. I think there we go. We're going to take a 10-minute break. So for those on Zoom, thanks very much, and we'll see you around. For those staying on, we're going to take a 10-minute break. And while you take the break, when we return, we're going to be sitting in small tables, and there's going to be table cards in every table, okay? The 10 principles will be on the 10 tables. And what I want you to do in the first rotation is when you come back, well, YPOer, pick your super skill and sit at a table, hopefully spread out, try and figure out so you're not all clustered together. Sit at a table where you're super skill and EO, one of your weakest, so that we can pair up. And then the next rotation, we'll do a flip. And the idea is we're going to do 3 rotations of table work, and I'll facilitate those tables. But for now, we're going to have a 10-minute break. And it is, according to the clock here, 3:48. So we'll reconvene at 4 o'clock on the dot. Thank you. Sorry? Okay, everyone, so I had a clarifying question. Sit at the table where you ranked highest if you're YPO, not necessarily highest relative to your just absolute highest, like your highest possible rating if you're YPO. Yeah? And if you're EO, sit at a table which you were one of your lowest absolute ratings. Not relative, absolute rating. And once the table is at 5 people, find another table. We'll get a chance to rotate. I think I'm going to be alone. Are you passion high or passion low? You're EO, so passion's low for you. Okay, well, here you go. Your YPO and your passion, you're here. If that's one of your highest, yes. All right. So hopefully now we look like